Hello. Today we're going to read about gardens because I think it's a great time to be planting gardens. So we're going to start with Planting the Wild Garden by Catherine O. Galbraith, and it's illustrated by Wendy Anderson Halperin. Lots of seeds here. Planting the Wild Garden. The farmer and her boy plant their garden. They drop seeds, tiny, fat, round and oval, into the earth. From these seeds, pumpkins and peas, carrots and cabbages will grow. In the wild meadow, many seeds are planted too, but not by farmers' hands. Whoosh, the wind scatters seeds. It spills them, it spins them, and sweeps them up into the sunlight and out across the fields. Waves of black and gold dip into the meadow. Peck, peck, peck. The flock of goldfinches bobbles and sways. Some thistle seeds float to the earth. Others are strewn across the meadow in droppings. Under the afternoon sun, the pods of the Scotch broom grow hot and dry. Snap, snap. Out pop their seeds like popcorn from a pan. They land here and there and snap over there, where they will have more room to grow. Plop, plop, the rain patters on dusty leaves. Raindrops splash and splatter the dry earth, washing seeds to new places in the meadow. The stream carries seeds too. Gulp, gulp. Minnows dine on some. Others lodge along the bank. Next spring, new pussy willow shoots will poke up through the mud. Hidden in the tall weeds, rabbit nibbles a stalk of yarrow. Now a nibble of grass. Nibble, nibble. Hop, hop. Another seed falls to the ground. A hungry shadow watches. She slips past the tangle of cockleburs. She creeps through the Queen Anne's lace. Seeds catch on her thick coat. They hook onto her white-tipped tail. Fox. And jump! They fly off everywhere. In the summer moonlight, 1, 2, 3, 4 masked faces, 4 ringed tails. A family of raccoon feasts on blackberries. Chomp, chomp, chomp. When they amble home again, bits of berries and seeds go with them. Next spring, new prickly canes will pop up everywhere. Thump, bump. An acorn falls, then another. Quick, quick, the squirrel buries both and hunts for more. When winter comes, scratch, scratch, scratch. Down through the snow he digs, one fat acorn, then another, plenty of food to last till spring. Some nuts are lost, but few are wasted. This great oak tree grew from an acorn buried many years ago. Stomp, stomp. People help plant the meadow too. Seeds travel on muddy boots, hitchhike on sweaters, snag on socks, and whoosh, sail on a puff of breath. Seed by seed, we planted this wild meadow garden. Wind and water, birds and animals, plants and people, all of us together. You didn't know you were planting a garden when you walked outside, did you? So this one's called Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. And it's written by Candace Fleming and G. Brian Karras. and it's one of my favorites. For years, Mr. McGreely dreamed of planting a garden. He dreamed of getting his hands dirty, of growing yummy vegetables, and of gobbling them all up. But he never once tried it until this spring, said Mr. McGreely. This spring, by golly, I'm going to plant a garden. So he hoed and he sowed and he watched his garden grow. Lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes. Yum, yum, yummy, said Mr. McGreely. I'll soon fill my tummy with crisp, fresh veggies. But one night, when the sun went down and the moon came up, 3 hungry bunnies appeared. Tippy, 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 pat. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his gnawed sprouts, he was angry. So he built a small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. There he declared, "No bunny can get into my garden now." And the sun went down and the moon came up. Tippy, 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 pat. Spring hurdle, dash, dash, dash. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his nibbled leaves and gnawed sprouts, he was really angry. So he built a tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. Oof, he huffed. Those flop ears will never get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now. The sun went down and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat. Dig, scrabble, scratch, scratch, scratch. Spring hurdle, dash, dash, dash. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was really, really angry. So he made a deep, wet trench outside the tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. It's a moat. "Ha," he snorted. "Those pufftails can't get under it. They can't get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now." And the sun went down and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat. Dive, paddle, splash, splash, splash. Dig, scrabble, scratch, scratch, scratch. Spring hurdle, dash, dash, dash. Muncha, muncha, muncha. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his chomped blossoms, his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was furious. So he hammered and blocked, sawed and stalked, drilled and filled and tapped and blocked. And he built a huge, enormous thing before the deep, wet trench outside the tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. "I've outsmarted those twitch whiskers for sure," he exclaimed. "They can't get through it, they can't get under it, they can't get over it. No bunny, no way, no how can get into my vegetable garden now." And the sun went down and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 stop. The 3 hungry bunnies looked and smelled and touched the huge, enormous thing before them, and tippy, 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 pat. The bunnies hopped away. It's a big padlock. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his untouched vegetables, he was happy. "I beat the bunnies," he whooped and did a jiggly wiggly victory dance. Then He climbed over, jumped across, squeezed between, and crawled under until he reached his vegetable garden. Ah, sighed Mr. McGreely, at last. Smacking his lips, he picked and pulled up lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes, and with his basket overflowing, he reached inside for something yummy. Can you see what's here in his basket? Little rabbit ears. Muncha, muncha, muncha. They were eating in his basket. Now they're all eating carrots together. Okay, I have one more garden book. This one is called My Garden by Kevin Henkes. It's nice bright colors. My Garden. Nice little bunny. My mother has a garden. I'm her helper. I water, I weed, and I chase away the rabbits so that they don't eat all of the lettuce. It's hard work, and my mother's garden is very nice. But if I had a garden, there would be no weeds, and the flowers would keep blooming and never die. In my garden, the flowers would change color just by my thinking about it. Pink, blue, green, purple, even patterns. And if you picked a flower, another one would grow right back in its place. In my garden, the rabbits wouldn't eat the lettuce because the rabbits would be chocolate and I would eat them. If I planted seashells, I'd grow seashells. If I planted jelly beans, I'd grow a great big jelly bean bush. Sometimes in my garden, good, unusual things would just pop up. Buttons and umbrellas and rusty old keys. In my garden, there would be birds and butterflies by the hundreds, so that the air was humming with wings. The tomatoes would be as big as beach balls, and the carrots would be invisible because I don't like carrots. At night, the morning glories would stay open, shining like stars, and the strawberries would glow like lanterns. It's night now. Only the fireflies and the porch light are glowing. Before bed, I take one seashell from the shelf in my room and go to the garden. I poke the seashell into the ground. Who knows what might happen? I cover it up with dirt and pat down the dirt with my foot. What are you doing? Asked my mother. Oh, nothing, I say, just working in the garden. There's the seashell, and it has a little root. What would your ideal garden look like? The end.